Hey guys, it's Quickie Baby, and don't adjust your sets. Nothing is wrong with your computer or your television, whatever you might be watching this on. I am indeed playing an artillery. This is the Tier 8 Soviet self-propelled gun, the Su-14-2. It has a gigantic cannon, 203 millimeters in diameter, and so it causes quite a headache to anything it directly hits, or even just splashes nearby, as we're going to see in this video. Now, I don't play the Su-14-2 very often. Sometimes it's quite fun to have a game or two on the live stream and to get back into the artillery mindset. One thing that's quite good is once you play artillery, you start to learn positions which are more frequently visited. As an example, when you play your medium, your heavy tanks, or your light tanks. And you also know some locations which can and can't be shot by when there are artillery on the enemy team, which you can make use of. So the aim time in the Su-14-2 is very long indeed. You'd expect that with having such a high caliber gun. Now, we've located towards the south of our spawn, and we can just about loop our shell over that rocky outcrop to be able to engage the tanks towards the north. So what I'm doing here is I'm holding my right mouse button to keep my locator accurate and aimed at the target where I thought something would reappear, while I go around the battlefield looking for shots that I might be able to have on other targets. So I fire in a shell here. The IS-8 disappears just before our shell hits, and so we don't get an indication of how much damage was done. But we might see if we hit him flush. And as our shell disappeared, that means that it did hit him flush and we didn't see the explosion. If you miss the target, then you indeed will see an explosion, but the IS-8 disappeared there just before we hit him. In fact, we did manage to take off a significant amount of his health, reducing him to 873 hit points. So now we're aiming in again, and we can see the engine deck of an IS-7. That's a very valuable Tier 10 tank. And if you can make these kind of shots in your Tier 8 artillery, you can do a hell of a lot for your team. So we're locating further and further south, which allows us to get shots in here. Now what you'll see me doing is aiming just past the enemy tank quite often. I'm aiming just past the enemy tank. More on that later. We've got a Tiger II, a Tier 8 German heavy tank in our sight. We fire a shot. We splash next to him, doing 750 damage. That's half of that Tier 8 heavy tank's health, an equal tiered opponent to the Su-14-2. So I'm continuing to relocate. Now I know where the enemies are digging in. I want to keep changing my position to be able to get more effective shots on the north. However, in the meantime, there's a Tier 8 American tank destroyer there, the T-124. That's a very dangerous target. And if I can land one on his engine deck, it's quite likely that it will go in. But in the meantime, we're going to be aiming north again towards this IS-7. Nearly there, nearly there, nearly there. Let's wait for it. We'll fire just past the target. And we hit him for 666. Now, when that was happening on the live stream, that was quite comical. 666. The devil is playing artillery. I don't know. Take from that what you want. All we really need to know is that's nearly a third of the IS-7's hit points shaved off with a direct hit. So we've hit every shell we fired so far. Well, we didn't hit the Tiger II, but we splashed him for a significant amount of damage still. Now, unfortunately, this IS-7 believes that he can get some cover. It's not going to work. From the position that we're in, we can loop another shell onto his tank, hitting him this time in the tracks, but still doing 706 damage to him. That's 1,372 damage done to a Tier 10 heavy tank fairly quickly. Now, if you're watching, maybe you're not an artillery player, maybe you're watching this for the first time, you can see that the reload is very long. But when you do hit those shells against fairly stationary targets, they're absolutely crippling. We can see an E4 there, and we're looking for a shot on the IS-7, but we've left our aiming where we were aiming at the E4, so to say. The E4 has pulled back, and I'm just feathering other targets. Now I can see this E50M, he's worth aiming at. So you can see I release my right mouse button and decide that it's time to get the E50. Now we want to aim where we think he's going to go. So I'm thinking he's going to go into the bushes right now, but he surprises me. Now he's in a dip here, which means that he should go backwards and forwards in the dip, so we can predict his movements. We fire a shell, hit him flush for 1,603 damage. That is a penetrating shot. The average damage on this gun is 1,850, so that indeed was a very low roll. We should have, well, practically one-shot that tier 10 medium tank as we penetrated him. But he got lucky, we low-rolled, and we only did 1,603 damage to that tier 10 medium tank. Now we have another tier 10 medium tank, a Leopard. This one's very lightly armored. If I'm able to hit this one, it's almost guaranteed to go in. We fire our shot, and we splash just in front of his tank, shaving off another third of his health, doing 646 damage. So what a difference a couple of shots can make for an artillery. This was a 43%er. We're in a tier 10 matchup. This is as bad as it could be for the SU-14 too. However, going against tier 10 targets when you've got such a high caliber gun really doesn't matter. I almost enjoy getting these tier 10 games. But having this 43%er really shows that if you're able to land your shots in the artillery, they can be game-changing for your team. And in the right situations, such as this, I guess you can sort of still carry a team in your artillery. So here's the E4. We fire. He reverses into our shot. We hit him. Unfortunately in the tracks and not the engine deck. But unfortunately, whoa, I guess it's a bit sarcastic in a way. We still did 727 damage to him, shaving off basically about a third of his hit points. Now if the shell had gone a little higher and we'd landed it on top of his engine deck, we would have been able to do a lot more and one hit him. Now I like to use HE shells in this tank. There's an argument to use the AP shells, although they do less damage. And if you fail to hit the tank or you hit him in the tracks, then you won't be able to kill the target. But I've been speaking to Mav a lot recently, the leader of QSF, who plays artillery a lot more than me. He's been telling me how much success he can have firing AP shells. Now I think that that might be a very viable thing in the Object 261, Tier 10 Soviet tank destroyer. But maybe in this tank with its less accurate, higher aim time, much worse rate of fire, you could be better to fire the HE. Now I position myself on the hill here, and I'm trying to think, where will the Waffenträger Alpha E100 be? This is my guess as to where he will be. So just going to wait and see. Now positioning myself on this hill is a bit stupid, because as we can see, the Leopard manages to spot me. Fires in a good shot into my... Wow, was that penetration? No, that's just on the model. Fires in a good shot into me, taking off most of my hit points. And I'm running away, trying to avoid the enemy GWE 100. Are we going to... Whoa, that was close. Bit of a lucky dodge there. But the SU-14-2 lives to fight another day. Don't know what this Jagdpanzer E100 is doing. Chilling around at the back of the base. But I'm going to try and help up my team against the Waffenträger Alpha E100. Now I decide to fire clutch. Very, very, very nearly hit, even though we didn't aim our shot at all. Now, I did that because I thought that the GW Tiger over there was going to get him. And also, I'm quite worried about the leopard, who was last spotted down there, and none of my team seem to be too bothered about dealing with the leopard. Even this Jagdpanzer E100, that tier 10 German tank destroyer, is just chilling at the back of the base. In the meantime, we've nearly managed to reload. Let's see if we can hit our second shot against this German tier 10 tank destroyer. So we're trying to predict where he's going. You have to do that to be successful in an artillery. You can't aim at the target, you have to aim where he's going to be going. We fire. And a gigantic side of his turret. That was a huge target, taking him out. So next, a leopard's invading our base. I'm wondering if that Jagdpanzer E100 is AFK or not. And it's time to go TD mode in an artillery. And I find the Su-14 too quite challenging to go TD mode in. I feel like it's a gigantic target. Unless you can loop the shell over the hill, it's quite tricky. And here we go, I'm trying to get the leopard. Ah! Played that really badly there. But justice, justice. I'm sure all of you guys think, wow, that's just karma for you there, Mr. Quickie Baby. That's karma. You deserve to die in the artillery. Maybe I did indeed. For all of my artillery sins this game, having done 5,300 damage that we have seen so far. Now there's a Foch 155 trying to take out the enemy artillery, who seems to have had a successful game as well, picking up 2 kills. And this has got to be a nice situation to be in a Foch 155 going after the enemy artillery right at the end of the game. Boom. Not today. Not today, Mr. Scumbag. Not today. And justice for me. I died too. So there's a few things that I really want to highlight from this video. One, that artillery can be absolutely devastating, and one clean hit or even a splash to the side of your opponents will shave off generally a third of their health. Even the least accurate artillery, such as the Su-14-2 that we have seen, when you fully aim your shots, you will generally hit your target, or at least splash nearby them, doing significant damage. Artillery do need to relocate as well. Advancing to the south here gave me the elevation that I needed to be able to get shots in towards the north. I also realized that even in situations where you think your team might be at a disadvantage, if you're able to put out some really effective shots, you can still carry and change the tide of the battle. There's a good amount of skill in artillery, and there are some particulars that you have to learn to be able to play them well. And once in a full moon, it's quite fun for me to get in it and ruin some people's days. A lot of people think that I genuinely hate artillery, and I'll let you know that I really don't. What I mean is I don't hate the players, I just think the class in itself is pretty ridiculous. The fact that they can effectively engage most of the battlefield from the safety of base, and if you're stationary for 10 seconds, then they can easily shave off a third of your health irrelevant of the tank that you're in. And if they get even a little bit lucky, it's going to be more like 3/4 or all of your hit points. I think the main reason why I don't like artillery is because of the unpredictability or the RNG that they add into the game. If you've got a teammate and he's next to you in an E100, you generally know what he will and will not shoot at. However, if you've got several artillery sitting in your base and they're not communicating with you using the I'm reloading or I'm going to be shooting at keys, you might really need their help in holding one of the flanks against some lightly armored tank destroyers. Or you might be sitting there sweating it in your light tanks, lighting up the entirety of the enemy team, and another shell doesn't get fired. I also guess that as a player that is arguably targeted quite a lot, having a class out there that can shoot you from anywhere more or less can be quite frustrating. Don't get me wrong, there is a lot of skill in artillery, but I still personally think that the class as a whole needs to be reworked so it integrates more with the team and less of a lone wolf sitting in base sort of choosing who lives and who dies. Anyway, let's take a quick look at the post-game stats. So this was the first game of artillery that I played in the new patch, and we had quite a result. This was during a 3x experience event, and we got 6,201 experience, which is 2,067 with a premium account. and 1,378 base experience. And we got a Confederate medal because we didn't actually get many kills, but we kind of left the enemies on very low health quite often. We played the supporting role for our team, for which the requirements are drive an SPG and cause damage exceeding 10 times the hit points of your vehicle. I like that medal a lot. I think it's a really good one to aim for, and I think it gives an artillery player an achievement equivalent of picking up, say, an Orlix medal in a light tank. As well as the gauze, we managed to get the high caliber, as we did over double what anyone on our team did, even though there were quite a few tier 10 tanks on our team. Now, we fired 10 shots, of which 6 directly hit the target. That's some pretty good accuracy. And that also includes the shots that we didn't completely aim, that we just took as a last-ditch attempt to try and hit the enemy before we would have to relocate or before he would hide behind a rock. Now, this gave us a combined total of 6,381 damage, spread amongst 7 enemies that we did hit, and the 1 that we destroyed. We also got a bit of assistance damage. As you can see, we did 783 D-tracking. And when we look at the enemy team, the other dominant player was indeed the artillery. Now, this might have just been completely situational. We were playing on El Halou, quite a slow-paced map where the artillery do have a nice amount of cover, against a nice mix of opponents with the slower heavy tanks and the lightly armored tank destroyers and even the medium vehicles. However, for me, it was nice to see that even when you play artillery once in a full moon, you can still have a little gem of a game like this. Nevertheless, when I've been looking over my history of my damage done in the SU-14 too, and if you guys watch my live stream a lot, you will have seen most of my artillery games. I do feel like you do end up doing a hell of a lot of damage and end up towards the top of your team in the majority of games. I won't pretend to be the most experienced artillery player. Maybe the SU-14 too is just the T-57 heavy of artillery at tier 8. But I think artillery is still a very strong class, and considering that now they have the same matchmaking as tier 8 tanks, I can't imagine coming into a game and doing this in a Pershing as an example. I'm just slightly concerned about when they rebalanced the matchmaking of the artillery, but now we're seeing gigantic high caliber guns meeting lower tier vehicles, like the SU-14-2 can meet tier 6s, and it frequently does. Now, even if you splash near most tier 6 tanks, they will die, or you will lose basically nearly all of your health. And seeing how this can be done from nearly every position, especially with the recent map changes, with Wargaming trying to make the maps more progressive, it leads me to believe that artillery is still very, very, very powerful, and if played correctly can have a dominant role on the battlefield. I still think that it needs to be tweaked a lot, but I hope this video also cleared up a lot about my opinion towards artillery and how I see them and their role in the game. I think I'm going to start playing artillery for 1 or 2 games, maybe every live stream from here on, just so I can continue to evolve my opinion on artillery as of late. And I specifically want to get to the Object 261 because I personally feel that would be the most dominant artillery that there could be. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this video and the novelty of me playing in artillery. If you did, please consider rating it down below. I'd really appreciate it. And let me know in the comments what you think about artillery. Do you think that they've been nerfed enough? Do you think they need to be nerfed more? Are you an artillery player and you find it really hard to be competitive in the game? Or are you an artillery player and you get a gauze medal every 3 games? Do you think that they're ridiculously strong and you kind of want everyone to keep quiet about it so that you can continue to absolutely massacre your opponents? Anyway, as always, thank you so much for watching. You've been epic and hopefully I'll see you soon.